When you really listen to your intuition, it will pull you into where you will grow the most and where you will be of the deepest service. There are these seeds that live inside each one of us. We came with these seeds because these seeds need to be planted into this world. I just want to create space for everyone to be able to trust more in that innate wisdom that they have, and to understand that we need their way of seeing, no matter how naive it might seem or how insignificant it might seem, or even if it's not going to solve the entire problem. Hello and welcome. It is wonderful to be with you as always. If you would like to join us in person on June the 12th, and you are in the UK and can come and be part of our pilgrimage in Avebury, you are most welcome. And for those of you that can't make it, you can join our live panel, which is a speaker event that we'll be hosting after the pilgrimage in Avebury. And we'll be sharing our insights and that field of wisdom that will come through during the pilgrimage. Our guests are Charlotte Pulver, Chris Park, Bruce Parry, Ada Paris, and Jimena Paracha, as we explore this theme, We Are Nature. And this is created in partnership with Noisily, the Mind, Body, Soul area. And you can find our information and the links to get the tickets if you go to our website and click on events. If you don't as yet have my book, Intuition, Access Your Inner Wisdom, Trust Your Instincts, Find Your Path, you can find out how to get a copy either as a hardback or audiobook from my website. If you go to www.amisha.co.uk/intuition, you will find links to everywhere you can get the book all over the world in the English language. The French edition is actually coming in September, and there will be more languages in 2022. When you go to that page on the website, you can also register for the gifts, and I've put together some sweet gifts around expanding and opening into your intuition, including a workshop, the extra chapter that I wrote for the audiobook, a video from the launch event, which had some incredible live music performances, and a few other things just to help open the fields of possibility for your intuition. And speaking of this Monday is the start of our new course, Intuitive Flow, which I have been putting together since the book launch. This feels like the right time. It's actually quite an inner time over the next month or so. And so it feels like harnessing that energy of when we're pulled more into our inner world, and how we can then navigate as community with this intention to open up our intuitive fields and support each other with these practices, as well as very practical sharings. One of the questions I'm asked the most really is, how do you actually live from your intuition in amongst all of life's other responsibilities and happenings? How do you trust in your intuition and actually live from that wisdom? How do you release all the other noise so that you can hear? In this 4-week course, we will explore themes including how to work with a lunar cycle to create a deeper relationship with your inner world, how to make a decision clearly and in tune with your inner wisdom, how to create enough space to really listen, how to trust your intuition and not follow your ego or wishful thinking, how to create a working relationship with your intuitive intelligence and rational intelligence, how to expand your field of reality, how to live in flow consciousness, how to let go of insecurities and second-guessing yourself, and how to work with pendulums, talisman, and adornment to strengthen intuition. You can find out the full information if you go over to my website, amisha.co.uk/intuitive-flow. And there is an early bird offer there too if you enroll by Friday, as in tomorrow. And you can also find it on the events page. If you feel called to join, the first live event will be a week today on the new moon, and there will be various practices that you'll be asked to do every day, as well as these live sessions. For this week's episode, we have another one where the mic has been turned on me. We invited Alea Kay, who some of you know as Lex Empress, to come and ask me questions. Lex was our guest on episode 58 on improvisation, presence, and surrender, where I also shared some of the soul songs that she's given me. And so I highly recommend that you go and have a listen to that episode. Alea Kay is an internationally renowned vocalist, coach, and a master of improvisation who works to connect people with their inner truth and empowers them to live their fullest potential. She is known for her soul song retreats and concerts, which have transformed the lives of people all over the world. At the core of Alea Kay's philosophy lies the idea that each moment of a human life provides an opportunity for deep transformation, a chance to connect with one's inner flow. We explore the themes of intuitive flow, cyclical living, and future community in this conversation called The Essence of Life, Living a Life of Embodied Intelligence, where we speak to the question, how can we sense and cultivate our intuition as a life skill that helps us foster thriving communities? I hope that you enjoy this episode and that it opens up your remembrance of your intuition. Welcome to The Future is Beautiful, with me, your host, Amisha Ghadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between politics, spirituality, creativity, and sustainability. It's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a brighter future. This is the revolution. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures that we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to dream, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing, we create the future that we wish to wake up for. That future is beautiful.
Here we are. Yay. So we have been speaking also throughout the past year and done work together. And so much has changed and so much has happened. And I know you've written your book. I've seen your book. And actually, I was really interested if you could tell me a little bit about your book now. It's because it's been out, and it's the beauty of having a little bit of a moment, a little bit of a breather behind, like after it. If you could tell me a little bit about what the book means to you now, what it stands for now that you've done a step back, you've finished it, and like in the turmoil of actually getting it out there, it's definitely a different experience. So I'd love to know if you could share a little bit about that now, what it means to you now it's matured in a way.
Thank you for that question and for sharing the space that we're in together and through the year, and for bringing the birds right now to this conversation on your beautiful island.
Mm.
When I was asked to write the book, there was an internal wobble around, do I even know what intuition is? And is this even something that I can write on? And I felt very strongly, yes, there is, but it was almost like the transmission that came through whilst writing the book was working its way through every cell of my being as that writing was happening. My reflection now, a year later from when I was actually in that space writing, and now that the book is out there, that it has really guided me to fully live from that intuitive place and to really, really trust in that. And I can see that I was doing that for years anyway, yet there was doubt that would creep in, or I would second guess myself, or I would believe some of the conditioning or the stories, or I didn't have certain levels of awareness around some of the patterns that were creating that doubt. And I'm sure there's more of those, because I believe that that's part of our life's work, that we're always having more revealed to us if we're willing to see it, and if we're willing to keep shifting and evolving and expanding into the deeper truth of who we are. That expansion always means that we have to come back in, like bring our wings in and take a moment, and that can happen in quite dramatic ways and quite subtle ways, and that's always there available. And yet what I feel has completely radically shifted for me is that core base point of what it means to live from one's intuition, and why it is so important that each one of us reclaims that part of our intelligence. I can see now so clearly how dangerous it is for us on our individual level, but also collectively, to keep that intuitive intelligence in the shadow area of our lives and our inner worlds, and how much that limits what's possible and how much pain it creates and excess suffering, and means that we live from a place where we're not clear. And so in my own life, this has been immensely challenging year, because it has been a year of deep karmic family service. It's not been like that year of following like the most expansive, highest calling. It's been a year of really like tending to the roots and showing up and offering support and stepping into deeper levels of responsibility and learning more about grace than I have ever learned before. And with that, feeling often alone and feeling like really in that space where you're standing at the edge and there's no one standing with you, no one that you can see at least. and yet there is so much support available in that more than human space. And so I feel like the gift of being asked to write this book has been a personal gift of really believing in what I can see and what exists in the unseen realms, and very clearly seeing the schism that this culture has so clearly, and by this culture I mean this dominant culture in which we live, has so clearly, meticulously, really with like, a lot of violence and intelligence and manipulation separated us from this core of ourselves. For me, that's now like non-negotiable. And I feel that the aspect of my like offering into this world, of my service and of my being, is to reconnect people with that. And it's like a daily reminder, it's a daily practice, because it's been so strongly severed in our cultural consciousness.
Yeah, beautiful. It's marvelous. I always call this state, or at least there's the absence of doubt, which is different than just being really certain about something. It's just absence of doubt, and you kind of know. So what I find really interesting, and I'd love to know if you see a correlation. Last year's been really interesting for a lot of people, and the year has chosen to evolve differently for some. Do you see maybe a correlation between the fact that you had to write the book, that on intuition, and that you were immediately pushed into this journey of the family karma, the having to actually slow down somehow and be intuitively present on what needed to be done? Do you see a correlation somehow?
I chose it. It was a very clear choice. I was, about to fly back to Bali, where I would have been in a certain kind of bubble there. And it was my intuition that said, no, don't go. And it was very, very clear at that moment. I didn't know that my father was dying. I didn't know exactly why, but I felt it's not right to go. Sometimes, especially in spiritual practice, and it's like we're taught to kind of chase, if you like, the most expansive and the kind of flowing and the easeful.
Love and light.
Love and light, baby. And I really feel that when you really listen to your intuition, it will pull you into where you will grow the most and where you will be of the deepest service. In this case, this pandemic has like rooted me into England and into my family and into supporting with difficult chronic illnesses and all kinds of things. And yet at the same time, what I can feel is that grounding and rooting and stepping up, it's grounded and rooted and expanded the intuitive field within me because I've been able to do it in the hardest situation of all. You know, everyone says, like the classic Ram Dass, if you think you're enlightened, go spend time with your family. And so to be in that space where I can feel that growth within the confines of a pandemic and a very intense year of transformation and grief and uncertainty on a personal and collective scale, like for me, that helps me to see the power of what we're talking about as an actual life skill that's in service of this world.
I wonder, so a person reads your book, will they be allowed to enter into the same medicine through the information? Because to me, absolutely, as you know, because you know that I really believe that going in head first into the transformation is the way to go. Absence of doubt, no looking away, courageously with a great sense of humor going right in. So if and when people are reading your book, will they have more access to that? Have they somehow, will they remember, will they remember their intuition and be able to access that beauty? Because I consider that to be the absolute beauty of life, where the realness is, and not the bubble is just taking place, but where the transformation is, hence also where the breath, the truly deep breath reappears. Can they access that more easily? How does it show itself when reading the book?
The book has these 9 principles. I wrote those pretty much over a 10-day silence over spring Navaratri and Nyepi, like the time of silence in Bali. And it was also the very beginning of like the global lockdowns at the beginning of this pandemic. The way that the words came through, it was like a summary of like many things that I had learned over this lifetime and beyond, that no matter where you are, if you're just curious, if you're not yet a believer, if the doubt field is there, if the permission needs to be opened, that these words will do that they will speak to something that can then open up these fields of permission and take somebody, in relationship with the logical, rational mind into this space of recognizing the simplicity of that there's this aspect of our intelligence that is so important that has been cut out, and that it's logical to invite it back in now that we know. It's one thing if you don't know, and it's one thing if you have felt isolated in that knowing because you haven't had people to connect with and to expand and learn and grow and share, and that really now this is like a time where we do have that. And so with the book, it gives also 53 practices, and each of these practices opens up these fields of permission, of knowing, and of possibility. At the same time, through the community that we're creating here with The Future is Beautiful, and I'm about to start this journey where we'll have a community going through a process over 4 weeks to come into this field of trust with intuition, that bringing in other people so that can really help to strengthen the permission and the possibility. We need role models. Like, we need to know that that's possible to live in that way and have space to ask those very like, sometimes very like practical and yet very deep questions of like, well, how have you done that? And how did you know that? And how were you able to, from that point, actually make real decisions in your life from this kind of intelligence? And so, as well as what's in the book, what I really feel is important to offer is that space for how you actually embody going forwards, and how we uplift each other into that embodiment.
Beautiful. So this is great to know, because it's easy to speak from a space of being, for me, highly intuitive by nature, but the most interesting people now to give tools are the ones that have, interest but no idea. So it sounds great. Steps and tools.
Yeah.
And my Dutch nature says, yes, that's very pragmatic. That works. Because it's true, it's, and then to do it together, it's everything. So you're referring to community. And I know from the first moment we met that this is one of your great passions, to bring about this very strong, thriving community. Can you explain a little bit more what your actual vision is for the future regarding this community? What do you ideally see, and what do you consider to be a pathway that we could go? And maybe even relating to the work that you have done now with the book and the gathering that you're going to be organizing soon.
Yeah, well, I just remember the moment of first hearing your voice. And this was at a community gathering, Aniwa, organized by our friends Vivian and Rudy, that had various Indigenous elders coming together in this space. And I was just sitting on top of a mountain having some time by myself. And I heard you singing in the distance, and something kind of woke up in me. I was sleeping and I was like, what, what is that? And I came down the mountain to like find what this voice was.
It sounds so epic. And I came down the mountain. Larger than life, right?
Yeah, and there you were.
There we were.
There we were. And I remember watching you and immediately feeling, I think I came up to you afterwards and said, I need to learn from you. Like, you're carrying something that something in me knows, but I wouldn't even know how to articulate what it is that I need to learn from you, but I can see that there's something. I feel like this is what community can bring for us, that we create spaces where we allow people to really like be who they are, and that it just like opens up this field of permission of that real divine space that lives inside of all of us and connects us all. I suppose that desire for community, for me, it comes from being on my own journey and finding it so isolating at times to be physically in a location where the people that I had around me were interested in things that were so different from what I was interested in. And so posturing into those things, like not pretending knowingly, it's like an unconscious pretending that these are the things that are important to me, but then feeling this emptiness and this unfulfillment and this betrayal of oneself that's so subtle that you can't even name it until something breaks that open, and then you go, oh, like this is what I need. And for me, going out to find people that I resonate with, to find like ways of being that I resonate with, just to find space where there is space to be who we really are, that is so much harder for some reason in this world than one imagines it could be, or, to use that horrible word that I don't like to use, should be. According to that should being according to the divine way of being. And when you go into different spiritual communities, a lot of them are not very safe, and you get people kind of sharing their reflections on you completely without permission, completely without grounding, completely like in this often in this sort of way of projection. And it can all be quite dangerous because you might have come from this place where like you had no community that you could talk to. So in my case, I was just surrounded by people that just wanted to drink as much alcohol as possible. And so I got really good at that, right? Because we're tribal creatures.
A skill. I've learned a skill.
Yeah, exactly. But a woman with my frame being able to drink 6 pints of Stella Artois and still be pretty like sober was a good skill. Not the best use of the miracle of being a human, and not the best use of this life. And so for me, that's searching, and then it kind of comes with actually having to put myself into some quite dangerous situations in order to find something different.
Evidently, it's hard to define what is real and what is just an approximation or even just a reflection of what is real. It's especially if the search is fresh, something that looks like the real thing easily is embraced as it is not the 6 pints. There's already such a huge gap between the 6 pints and something that appears to be real. But I do agree, it can be extremely dangerous. It can be really dangerous because to drink 6 pints, it is evident to anyone, even the people that are doing it, that is not the best choice to make. But a person that sells, or a group that sells themselves to be very connected and are not connected, well, it's like it's ice. It's ice. One can really like slip and fall, and then there's nothing to hold you. So heading towards where we should go, without using the word should, but where we're just going, heading towards where we're going in a beautiful, safe community. How do you envision it to be easier to recognize what is real, to be able to create a safe community?
The biggest vision, and I feel like this is something that most humans want, is to live physically close to people that want to live in a similar way of life with similar values, and to be able to nurture a physical space, some land together, and to live in a way where we're not all having to do everything in these kind of nuclear family kinds of lives. And I don't know how to create that exactly at this moment, because all of my explorations into that have been very cultish. I don't know if humans have evolved to the point yet where we can do that in the way that is healthy, because of the economic situation that we live in, and the reality that people have to put money in, and some people will put more money in, and it's very hard to create that in a way where it's really fair and it doesn't end up sort of getting taken over by egos. And I've explored lots of examples of this, of different kinds of spiritual intentional communities, and I haven't yet found where it's in, it's kind of
balanced.
Yeah. And I hope that it exists, and I just haven't experienced that yet. And I also acknowledge that humans can't be balanced all the time, like that none of us are. And so then, of course, when there's more than one of us and there's a group of us, then that imbalance is going to be prevalent. And it's not about creating utopia. But as I've sat with what is it that I can offer into the space, and what is it that the future is beautiful can provide, what's come up for me is this, it's like a sacred space of permission and trust and exploration. I feel like that word permission is so important, because it's like, if you're living very much kind of, within this kind of social economic models that we have to live within, it's like, how can you get the support and the camaraderie with the challenges that are very explicit in this reality? And so that's what I feel that we can offer. So we're going to have a gathering this summer, which is really around creating some stronger like ties and connections, and also after, during this pandemic, being able to gather some people and just remind ourselves of the importance of that physical connection and the power of sitting together and eating together and dancing together, and and co-creating, giving each other spaces to share our gifts and receive each other's gifts. Along with that, we're building an app. I know that the technological side is limited, but I also believe that it can offer so much, because it's not so realistic that everyone can just abandon everything else and kind of go to this utopia, that we're having to manage like whatever it is that we're responsible for. And if you have children or elders that you're responsible for, or even just yourself, then
Oh my goodness. Exactly.
Then you have to manage within that, tending to the divine space, to listening to the intuition, to making sense of what's happening in this reality and the fake news and the other agendas in which we're living upon, and holding space and tending to what's possible. It's a lot. And so I feel that that's when being connected to others that are on that same level, in that same process, and even just the power of being able to come together with people on a Zoom call and share, and the power of connecting with an awareness of the lunar astrology, for example. You know, we have gatherings where people come together and we'll be like in a moment, for example, this recent eclipse and full moon that was so powerful. And it's like, once you know, how can you actually work with those energies in the way of your own transformation, rather than kind of just being thrown around by those energies? How can you work consciously with them? And how can you work consciously with them with others? And so during that, we were able to offer like a Zoom and come together and share stories and actually understand like what's the invitation here at this moment. And then we danced, you know, on
nice.
Zoom, and we let the energy kind of move through our bodies, and everyone on that call had a really powerful experience. And a lot of what that eclipse was offering in that particular full moon was a release of very inbuilt stories and patterns that have been taking up space, and there was an opportunity. And so for me, part of creating a community space for the future is beautiful. It's like a live learning and unlearning space where that is in relationship with the rhythms of this life. And for me, the lunar rhythms are so important because we're so affected by the moon. We have so much water inside of us, and that gives us a really clear way in to navigate that, as well as the social, political, economic rhythms that we're also kind of navigating. And that's it. Then this community is like a space of imperfection together, and learning and unlearning. And also, like, really what I want to offer is a space that's softer, that isn't so intrusive. And for me, that speaks, I think, to what can happen in spiritual communities, where people get a hold of teachings and then they start kind of trying to tell other people what they're meant to be doing, or what those teachings mean for the others. And I want to create spaces for our own natural intelligence to be able to rise in those spaces. The teachings that you can receive from ancient wisdom and from books and from great teachers are amazing, but what you can receive from transmission and expanding your own field of listening, being able to truly listen to each other and to yourself and to Earth in all of her forms, that is the true education that's available for all of us. And for me, that's the basis of any kind of community space that I want to tend to and offer.
It's funny because I keep seeing this dialogue under Ramdas actually did that. He was quite famous. He was in this great space. You just run another workshop, and he was doing really great until he ran into this situation where, due to the diversity in a group, and the awakening of consciousness around segregation and around racism, part of the group said, we're not having this. We're not agreeing with what is happening here. And what he did there is that he didn't go forward with what the workshop was before, but he actually opened space for people to allow to speak, really share what it was that they were encountering and what it was that they were missing, and other people from outside of the circle being able to ask questions, and then bringing in the next group, even the group of women or a next ethnical group, and letting everybody express until all remarks were made, until all was expressed and all questions had been asked, then to define what was necessary for that community actually to be able to move forward, really allowing the space for unlearning from what is. Hence, in the imperfection and the acceptance of the imperfection lies the new perfection. Yeah, because we all come from the same mess at the end. We can pretend that we're above the mess, but I don't know about you, but regardless of all the work that I do, I'm definitely not above the mess. The mess is still happening real time.
Yeah. Don't trust anyone that tells you they're above the mess.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. I sometimes so people think that I think that I'm above the mess, and then they ask me the question, and I'm like, no, I am really, like, the whole human experience is extremely confusing to me. I'm fully in the mess. I think that's a great starting point also for a community to say, we all have no clue, and everything that we think we have a clue about probably will be one conversation will be under the bus, and we can redefine it together. It's really fascinating.
Hello. We're taking a short pause from the conversation. On behalf of our team and our community, thank you for being here and co-creating The Future is Beautiful. Much dedication, love, and time goes into the production of this show. We believe in being advertising free in a world that's always trying to sell us stuff we don't need. And so we make this show with you and for you, thanks to your support. There are 3 ways you can be more involved, so we can share the vision, wisdom, and creativity here as we explore what it means to be a human in this time. You can support the podcast by sharing it with your friends, posting episodes on social media, and doing iTunes reviews. You can support as a patron by making a monthly or one-off donation of your choice. And with this, you join the Global Patrons group and monthly video calls where we share connection and insight. You get to know the other amazing patrons from around the world, their stories and their work, and you offer direct support to me and the team, as well as being brought into the behind the scenes of creating something like this. It sounds like a lot, but it's as much or as little as you want to get involved in. You can become a member of Presence, our membership collective of care and practice, where we explore how to embody the themes of the podcast with workshops, calls, special events, tree whispers, and powerful tools, practices, and rituals that you can bring into your life. This is open to absolutely everybody as we create an inclusive and diverse space that celebrates well-being as a human right, where we explore together what it means to be creative, courageous, and connected to ourselves, each other, and the earth. This is about embodying sacred activism. We love meeting patrons and Presence members, and how being part in this way weaves our lives together, as well as making this show possible. If anything from this conversation has moved or inspired you, please get more involved. All information can be found at www.thefutureisbeautiful.co/community. This show really can't go on without your patronage and Presence membership, so please do make it happen. And now, back to the conversation.
I was wondering about the app, because you started saying not everybody can drop everything. Does the app allow for the same dialogue to take place?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we're building into the app is being able to find people that are physically close to you. Because I've been in those kind of community spaces where there's a group of you, and you're all in a hall and you're having to go through these really intense conversations and group circles. And I've often found, because I'm often the only person of color in those rooms, and you get thrown into an archetype, and then you're having to process this stuff. And I've actually just found a lot of those spaces to be really draining. And there's other work in the world that I need to do. And so for me, I'm not really at this point let's kind of create some perfect society, community, but like, let's find ways to strengthen the ways that we can show up in this one that we're in. And a big part of that is having people that you can connect with and go for walks with. And so, for example, if we'd had the app like before this pandemic, and we're going for walks with people, it was one of the only things that was legal, especially in the UK, then you could find somebody that's also connected to this same community. And in this case, it's like people that are interested in the themes and the context that we've been sharing through The Future is Beautiful and what the guests have all been sharing. And that we can actually give guidelines of, how do you listen when you go and spend time with someone, and being able to share some of these great tools around not trying to fix someone and not like leaping in with your opinions or how you would do it, and actually holding space for their own wisdom and intelligence to rise, so that empowerment can happen, and that connection, and that's kind of how we can strengthen what's possible within all of this messiness that exists. And so that's one really lovely feature, to find ways of connecting, and then to encourage people to host things if there's a lot of people in that area. So you kind of create those physical tools, but then also I really feel that the online space can be really nurturing. And because we're all prone to this addiction to the phone and the social media and clicking, that having a space like the way that I see this app is, it's like it's a sacred space. It's the equivalent of going into a forest or going into a really beautiful space where the intention is a certain kind of way, but on your phone. And so if you are like in all of the madness and the busyness and the messiness of normal life, that you can press this button, and that what people are sharing there isn't impacted by any kind of advertising or algorithms or marketing, and that there's space to share and to be heard and to share great things, and to ask questions around elements that you feel like other people might know about. And whether that's on like a practical level around building compost loos or something very kind of practical in like this regenerative future, or whether it's something much more of the inner space. And I feel like part of the empowerment that has always been part of my work, when I started What is the Future is Beautiful, it was 10 years ago. It came through in a different way. It was about politics, and it was about like how we can't trust politicians and political parties to create the vision of the world that we want to live in, and how we must trust in ourselves to have a vision and to be able to share that vision with others so that we can co-create it. And of course it's evolved, like the depth of that has evolved, but the nature of it is still very much the same. And in a way, I'm still here on the first point of it, which is this empowering people, individuals, souls to trust in their own vision. In a way, like, yeah, there's all these other things to do after that, but I'm still doing that one bit 10 years later, because that bit's really hard to do. And what I found is that, I ask people like, well, what is your vision of a beautiful future? And you come up against so much like, oh, well, the future's going to Schmidt and this isn't possible. And how are we going to... So you might get those layers, or you might get, well, like, who am I? Who's going to listen to me? Why does what I think matter? And all kinds of other things in between. And so at this stage, I have also accepted that we don't know the timelines, and I don't have that arrogance of a 20-something that's like, and we're going to do it now. I'm like, great, if this is my life's work, to keep opening up. There's a vision inside each one of us, and that we have permission to see it and to articulate it, and to find the tiny ways, even if they're very slow, of bringing that vision into being, then that's enough. That's the core of what I offer in the world, whether it's through these podcasts or whether it's through the intuition book or whether it's through my one-to-one work, that there are these seeds that live inside each one of us. We came with these seeds because these seeds need to be planted into this world, into this earth, and that we are those seeds. Yet we need to clear all these stories and unlearn this very patriarchal, rational way of being that makes us forget that we have something to offer, that we can't offer it until we've read this book or we've done this or we've studied with this teacher or we've done it, whatever. It's like, no, you just are. Like, that which you have to offer has been there since you were a baby, and it's there. That's what this community is about. It's like, it's not about like ranking and achieving these sort of levels. It's to constantly remind each other that we just are, that we each are present with gifts to offer. And our gifts alone aren't perfect, and I've worked in, I go deep and right in when I'm interested in something. So I've been in all kinds of environments around all kinds of people. And one of the key things that I've come up against again and again and again is, and it's because of our education system, it's because of the way that we're taught validation, the way that we're taught to validate ourselves and others, and what you need in order to be, an expert at something, where you might have something to say that someone else can listen to. That because of that, it disconnects us from so much of the wisdom that's here, that's already here. It's that simple. I just want to create space for everyone to be able to trust more in that innate wisdom that they have, and to understand that we need their way of seeing, no matter how naive it might seem or how insignificant it might seem, or even if it's not going to solve the entire problem. Because that's something that I would come up against a lot in my work, is that, people would be like, well, do you really think that this is like going to change the world? Like, is this important enough? And it's like, probably not, but neither's the thing that you're doing. Like, let's just be honest. And like, I probably didn't say that. I probably just went, oh gosh, maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. And like, had to go on a whole process around that and wouldn't have said anything back to anyone else. But where I see it now is like, and probably the thing that someone else is doing isn't going to change everything anyway. It's about tending to like what's here and believing in the beauty of who each one of us is, and allowing, you can feel the difference between that intuitive wisdom. It feels different in your body. It feels different in your tone of voice. It feels different from when it's something from the ego, and it's something from conditioning, when it's something from fear. And so I just feel like that is in itself something so necessary, to create space where we allow each other to be and express from that part of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. It's fascinating what you're referring to. For me, also very much has to do with how to disempower humanity, is by actually telling them that the exact opposite of what is truly important is important. So by claiming that the material is important, or status, or that makes us not listen to the grandmothers anymore, not listen to the, to the people that have been fasting for days in a row, or come out of a vipassana and have amazing things to say. No, we are listening to the business person that will lead you to fame and fortune in a certain amount of steps, and as long as you wake up early, and because that's your priority, and these are the tools to find the person in your life that will love you forever. It's just this whole way of turning the heads of an entire globe away from the grandmothers, away from from true knowledge, away from intuition. Absolutely. Just like the work that I'm doing, it's all about remembering. It's all about remembering. It's just mere remembering. It's nothing else, nothing fancy. It's extremely complicated if you're really far removed from it. But if you think about it, it's just remembering who you and I and we all have truly been. So yeah, I completely resonate with this.
Yeah, it's profound remembering.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's like the essence. It's like I always debunk everything as being extremely simple and then moving from that space because it takes a lot of tension off. Part of the conditioning is that the moment you do something, people drop it already because it's not going to change everything today. So that's not worth it. Not being able to look at the big picture anymore because we're not allowed to have unique thoughts and to believe in community. So yeah, to come and say, we're going to create a community where we're all going to be connecting to our essence, that's already an act of, it's a revolutionary act.
Yeah.
It's an act of revolution. Yeah, there you are. Yeah. So I was wondering, because I also know that you are connected to the book and connected also to the app, but in a different way. You were going to do an intensive, like a 4-week program on intuition. And because this is something that people need to develop at the end. So could you share a little bit about what that is, what the buildup is of the intensive, if it's live or if it's online, and how does it work?
We're going to go on a 4-week journey. And it's one of those things where I had the intention to do it at the beginning of the year. And it's just every month I'm like, oh no, it's next month. It's next month. And then finally it feels like now. And it especially feels like now because during this full moon eclipse, there's one particular piece of my conditioning that I have been devoted to clearing for 15 years, and it finally went. It may return. I hold my hands up humbly. It may return, but it was such a huge piece for me. And then I was like, okay, this is why I really needed to move that through, because this is part of the transmission to offer. And so we'll be using the book as a guide and some of the practices in the book. But I have found myself that for me, the shifts happen through transmission. They happen through listening and hearing words and often being like held in a field. It's why I love to work with you, because that happens in our space together, and things are able to just shift and move and get reorganized. And so I wanted to offer something that is based on what's shared in the book, but is also very much around then all the conversations I've been having with people since writing that book over the last year and what's really needed. So we're going to be doing some of the practical aspects, like how do you make a decision, which is the big one. How do you know if it's your intuition or if it's your ego? And then some kind of the things around how do you live within certain rhythms. So we're going to be working from a new moon through to the next new moon. So we get to work through an entire lunar cycle and actually get to feel the rhythms and how they change, and then how we can work within those rhythms to connect deeper to our intuition, and how we can like live in this sacred reciprocity. And then there will be various guided meditations and yoga nidra practices that will help to both release some of the stories and the conditioning around what stops that ability to really live from intuition, as well as ways of opening up deeper access to the intuitive space. And also the practical examples of how people actually live an intuitive life in this world whilst earning a living, whilst dealing with all of the day-to-day responsibilities that we all have. And because I feel like that's something that there's not a lot of role modeling around. And so that's another aspect that I wanted to offer, because that sometimes in the books and everything, it can just seem so removed from how you actually do it. So I'll be sharing much more of my own journey, and then I'll also be inviting a few others to share how they've done it in a really practical way.
That's beautiful. So you have guests, that's guest teachers, or that's people from the program that will be sharing?
There will be a few guests just coming in and just sharing a little bit of their own journey. That just happened now. That wasn't planned. So, but as I was speaking, I mean, I was planning to share a lot of my journey of like how that actually works, in terms of like keeping a business going, in terms of managing all the different things that you have to manage in your life. And just as I'm looking at you and talking to you, I'm realizing that, and if a few more people come and share that, because I have great people in my life that I know that live in that way, that having some guests come and share will increase that field of possibility, which is what it's all about.
Interesting. Beautiful. There's the book, there's your own journey, there's this 4-week course, there's the app. I'm going to ask a really bizarre question. Could you see a line and stuff? Because I actually literally see a drawing of like a triple. So you have the Lemnis cut, the infinity symbol, and this one actually continues onward to the next, so I can see all of the shapes kind of almost like a helix. Do you see a deep logic behind it, and can you see where it is heading towards somehow, if you know what I mean? So you see like the pattern, the flow, and where it needs to evolve to. The community is clear, but maybe also for you on a personal level and in your work, where is all this going to? That's the question. Where are we going to? Which direction are we going?
I've been sharing some of my work as leadership work for years now, and like my mentoring program is leadership. And last year I started to call it beautiful leadership rather than anything else, because that spoke to the nature of it. And I feel like it's a redefining of what it is to be a human at this time. And it's a redefining of our priorities, and it's a redefining of the central point within each of us from which we move. And that's it, in terms of what that offering is, through everything, through whether it's the courses or the mentoring or the app or the podcast. It's all like in offering of this redefinition of what it is to be a beautiful leader, to be a human that is engaged with the realities of this physical world and the political, economic, social factors of this world, combined with the understanding of what it is to be a divine being and to be alive in a reality that is more than the construct in which we live. So I feel like we have to really pay attention to the construct that humans have been creating, that whatever we think of as kind of real and part of this world is a mental human expression. And yet that's all important, because that impacts so much that is very, very real in all of our lives. And at the same time, to be able to hold the complex notion of this life being so much bigger than that, and the aliveness of nature and of the more than human, and of the parts of ourselves. When you and I are having a conversation, there's us and our bodies, but there's other parts of us that are communicating that we are aware of, that has to be remembered for that to be part of one's actual experience. And so it's all of those things. And I feel like in my own self, where is it going for me? That it's around just how can I embody what it is to be a beautiful leader more and more each day, and so that I can offer that space of deep remembrance and empowerment. And so there we are, then I'm open to learning. And that's what's so great about having this podcast and also the app and the online space is that learning and unlearning it's real, it's in lifetime, it's constant, it's co-created.
Because I know that we're amazing at pretending that we're all good. But let's just say someone is actually listening to this podcast to be able to grasp onto something that gives hope. Let's say it's either coming from a space of anxiety, a space of fear, lack, or grief, sadness. What are like the top 2 or 3 tools that you can come up now from your intuition, how they can intuitively land a little bit more in where they truly are and who they truly are? Just maybe, pragmatic, practical ways of going back to having the extra oxygen to breathe, having the extra connection activated, the real connection activated. Is there anything that comes top of heart, top of mind, top of intuition that you could share?
Yeah, the very first thing that comes up, and this isn't exactly a tool, but it's a shift in perception, which opens the door for the tools. It's just to remember that you're not alone, and that everybody that you see out there that you might admire or feel like they've got it all together and that their lives are easier, like they're not. Like they might be at times. We all live in cycles. And what I have learned through times of fear and depression and death, sometimes death, like literally, like in the grieving of other people's deaths, but in the many, many, many deaths of myself, that there is always something that we can learn from those times. And it's like, as we're thrown into the underworld, and in a way, what happens in those real times of darkness is we're forced out of this kind of fake cultural narrative that like everything's cool and like, I go to work and I do my thing and I make my money and I pay my mortgage and then I go like to Zumba and I whatever, like I don't know what we do. I watch Netflix and
Zumba
chill.
and 6 pints of Stella Artois.
6 pints of Stella. Yeah, all of that. Like, and also, whether it's like I go to ceremonies every weekend and I do my meditation and everything. Oh, but I'm still depressed, like, which can happen. And now I feel shame because I have all these tools.
I should feel great.
Yeah. It's like, just remember that we're cyclical beings and that when we're in those darker times and those times of death, we're being shown that whole narrative isn't true, that there is nowhere that we should be, and there is nothing that we should be feeling, that it is a great gift to be connected to the real challenges and struggles that are happening in this world. It's to live in such an interconnected world and to not have moments of sadness in this reality that we are living in, with the amount of suffering and destruction and disrespect that there is. It's actually kind of like, I feel like you actually have to have some kind of like mental illness to not be connected to all of that sometimes, to not feel that. Like, if you really have no empathy for that, which is happening in this world, you never feel any of the darkness. And, it's always like, yeah, great, there's all this possibility. For me, that time really teaches me. And so I stay on that because there's so much shame that's, whether you're in the spiritual world or if you're not in the spiritual world, just like the shame of like, why can't I just do the simple things that everyone else appears to be able to do simply? And so the first thing is just really to hold yourself with so much love in those moments of darkness and in those moments of shame, and to find the people that you can connect to that will not try and fix you, that will hold space for your darkness, because they're not scared of it, to let that have a safe expression. And if you really can't find people that can do that, then to find ways in your own creative process, whether it's through writing or painting, or ways of like allowing there to be an expression so it doesn't all build up inside, and to know that it's possible to move through. And obviously, depending on the person, depending on the tools that they have in their own inner world, depending on the community that you have around you, you will need differing levels of support in all the different ways that might be. And so each person is unique in that way. But really, to be able to hold yourself without shame, or to find others or professionals that can hold you without shame, for me, that's really, really the first step when things are really like in that really dark spiral, or that feeling of impossibility. And also daring to dream. And that's why vision is so important, because once we understand that, like, if you have a vision, it doesn't mean that every aspect of it has to come true within 6 months. It's like the patience that you might need to tend to a beautiful garden. I am not a savvy, skilled gardener of physical earthy spaces, although I hope that there's a time in my life where I become one. And my mum had a beautiful garden when I was a child, and we were talking about it the other day, and she was like, I was like born in India. I didn't have a garden. Like I didn't know anything about a garden. I didn't even know what the names of flowers were. But then I had this garden, and I learned to tend it. And I learned, like, what do these different plants and flowers need? Where do you grow them next to each other? And you learn by trial and error. And then you also learn that sometimes it's completely out of your control, because an April frost might come. And then that April frost derails everything. And so to remember that we are like that, and that we're living with things that are completely out of our control, and yet we just keep tending to it. We learn, like, what are the conditions for this flower to thrive, right? The flower of our own being, the flowers of our own vision. And yet, if they don't, we learn how to tend to them in a different way. If something comes in, we learn how to let that go and to start again and to replant it. And without kind of going, oh, well, last year the frost ruined it, so I'm not going to bother. Like, oh, well, next year they'll flower.
It might not happen.
Yeah. Or maybe there's going to be some crazy thing that happens in September, and then they'll flower out of season, and it will be like, what? There's a lot of patience that's required to tend to vision, a lot of trust, and then also being able in real time to see how things shift and relate to each other in ways that we might not have imagined. And so then with that, the vision is constantly moving and expanding and being co-created. We learn from that and we allow it to flow. When I was naming this intuition course that I'm doing, I called it Intuitive Flow, because it is about being able to be in that flow, being able to respond and be in sacred reciprocity with what is. It's not about control. And it's also not like a passive thing where you just like let yourself be pulled, or you imagine that the flow will just take you and you don't have to show up within it, and you don't have to pay attention, you don't have to learn, and you don't have to tend to what you can tend to. That it's actually such a very complicated, this living in flow thing. It's complex, and yet it's possible. Yeah, we have to really tend. And so they weren't exactly tools, but if I was to give a really, really practical tool within all of that, I feel that the walking in nature is the one that helps connect to both of those two things that I've shared more than anything else, because you see things dying and coming into bloom. You see how things are always changing, and your perspective opens up beyond yourself and beyond the human mental mind constructed society and practicalities with which we live. And even if you're in a city, you just look up, you just look at that big sky. And there's one tradition, I mean, I'm sure it's in many traditions and it's escaped me which one, where that's one of the first things you do when you wake up, is you go outside and you first like look up, and when you look up at the sky, you're inviting in like this huge, it's like you can't even quantify how big is the sky and how far up does it go and what's beyond it and beyond and beyond. And so you're inviting in so much of the unseen. And then of course to then look at where your feet are and connect to the earth. And that practice, which you can do absolutely anywhere that you are, and even if for whatever reason you're bound into a physical space and you can't go outside, you can still remember that there is this earth below you and this big sky above you, and with real intention invite in the wisdom and connection from being a human in between this, being an energetic, I guess, channel between these two huge, huge energies.
Mm. Yeah, it's also phenomenal when you're in nature to start having conversations with everything around you, which is what I do. I voice over entire nature. I just give everything a voice, from trees to flowers to all the animals. They all have a voice. And you can play with that, beautifully activating interaction.
Yeah, and they speak to you and they listen. And if you can't find, humans that are good listeners, which it's a rare skill, which is why it's so much a skill that I want to share and want to kind of, I'm constantly evolving into my own listening skills on all the levels. And I want to keep offering ways for others around me to deepen their listening skills. That invites in so much, because we realize that if you can't find humans that are great at listening, the trees will listen.
Oh yeah. They're super calm. They will listen. Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. Well, that was a great tool. It's a great tool.
And if you will listen, the trees will speak.
Yeah. And probably they're already ongoing having a conversation and we're too busy not attending it.
Yeah, you'll be able to hear it.
Great to take your shoes off, right? To do and be in nature, and for a moment take your shoes off so you can really connect more. Yeah, it's beautiful. What is the follow-up? What is next? What is coming in the timeline? What is first and what is second? What is third on all your offerings?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the Intuitive Flow 4-week journey is going to start on the 7th of June. So that's coming up really soon. If you want to, come into this space of exploration and remembering and permission and tools around what it is to live an intuitive life and to be able to center your intuition, and then you're very welcome to join this group. And some of it will be things you can do in your own time and space, and there will be also opportunities to come together and to connect and to share and to ask questions and to be in that community space of transmission. And then we will have a gathering in the UK, which is where I am currently, in early September, for 100 or so people from this community to come and share their gifts and eat and be together physically. And then around that time, this app will be ready too. So we'll be able to all connect in deeper globally, and then start to really like kind of pull these different connections together. And then with that, we'll start to offer more courses and guest teachers and specific workshops around these skills that we've been discussing today. And then the next beautiful leadership immersion and mentoring will also start towards the end of September. So for this summer, it's the Intuitive Flow is the offering. And then I'm taking the rest of July and August out to listen, have that rest where so much can come in order to hold these other spaces in September.
Beautiful. But before autumn kicks in, everything has happened before we go. That's great. That's amazing. it feels bubbly and light, as well as very embodied and real. So beautiful. Really beautiful. I'm so happy that you are actually manifesting everything. And it's also really nice to see that you also give it different outings. So one online, one in the app, and one live. So people can get a little bit of everything or get all of it. It's so beautiful these times. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, the book is out there and it's being translated into French, German, and I think Spanish in the next kind of, I think the French version comes out in September and then the other ones will come out the following year.
Can people order the book through you?
Yeah, so if you go to amisha.co.uk/intuition, you will find the links to the book. So for like US, Australia, like UK, if you want the English language edition, like that's there and you can find ways to order it. And then it's also on Audible if you prefer audiobooks. And I wrote an extra chapter for that edition. And there's a gift package as well. So if you've bought the book anywhere, you can just share and receive these workshops that I've put together, including we had this beautiful book launch for the book back in December where 2 musicians came and sang and it was just really, really sweet. And I also have put a workshop together that has some of the practices in the book and shares like how you do them if you kind of need to hear and see. So that's all there as a gift. Yeah, you can find it all at amisha.co.uk.
And the workshop can also be found via the program, the 4-week program can also be found via. Okay, exactly. Perfect. Fantastic. So people can sign up there. Because it's going to be then in a week, right? 7th of June, you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's happening.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, when the time's right, the time's right. And I feel like sometimes when we're signing up for things, people like to just jump in last minute anyway. So it's been on there, it's been talked about since January. And so I know that some people have been expressing their interest and now it's happening.
That's the way it is. I started my program. I started the 3rd one of my program yesterday, and the people signed up 48 to 24 hours before, all of them.
Yeah,
so
it always
completely
happens.
Normal.
Yeah.
And the way it is right now.
Absolutely.
It's a new paradigm.
And do you want to share just as a little closing, a little bit about Mother of Pearl for the next, I'm sure there'll be a 4th and 5th edition.
Mother of Pearl is a course in remembering and goes through 5 stages. And the first stage is remembering the self. So remembering the physical body, the heart, the mind, the soul space, the complete organism in a holistic way that is you. And then also through the classes that are offered throughout the week, there's connected breathing sessions. There's satsang now every week with me. Well, we meet in truth and guiding the questions to the divine and the answers back from the divine. And then there's a beautiful work with Peter Opperman where we are working towards combining the future self meditations with the Mother of Pearl divine connection. And we've done that before, and it really leads to incredible visions for people. And then the base of the program, so week 1 is then connecting to the self, then connecting to Mother Earth, as you also refer to as being important, connecting to all life, also multidimensional, then connecting to the divine and coming back to purpose. The interesting thing is that people through the meditations and the soul song that are the base are actually experiencing that the change simply happens. It simply occurs. So the repetition is key, and continuously being exposed to what is the reality of who they really are allows them to remember and then become their own teachers. It's all community-based, completely. And the community also stays active after the program is done. So, they still meet each other. They still send each other messages and co-create. And it's really beautiful. It's really profound. Very grateful that I'm allowed to do it. Yeah, it really feels like a gem. Feels like the pearl. I do it. Oh, I do. Feels like the pearl.
The pearls that you're adorned with right now.
Exactly. Those pearls. Yeah. So it's really marvelous to do this. And it's very much aligned also, with this urge to create community, this urge to create the connection to the potential, move away from all the the conditioning that we've been undergoing completely unnecessarily. It's time to move forward into a beautiful future.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And just to
Mm.
point all of our friends listening to episode 58, where you shared your story, well, an aspect of your story.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. It's so amazing to talk to you. I'm really excited. I can't wait to hear the birds. They're like, oh my goodness. They just lost it. Like, ah. Yeah, I'm excited to see your offerings, and so I haven't read your book yet, and I really want to read it. And it's lovely actually to come from that space and ask questions, than to have read it, because you overlook, when you have read it before, you overlook the most important basic questions, like what is really in there, because then you know. So I'd love to read it, and I'm excited about all your offerings. And I actually would love to see you in the UK also in September.
Yeah. Oh, please come and do soul song.
Yeah.
Offer soul song.
Yeah, right.
That would be
Yeah,
amazing.
let's bring back Aniwa, but then on British soil. That would be amazing. Bring it where it's hardest, where it's needed the most. Yeah. Mm,
Yeah. Well,
beautiful.
the
Yeah,
invitation is there. So please come if you can.
beautiful. Mm. All right.
All right.
Thank you so
Many
much. Thank
blessings.
you. Many blessings to you. And maybe we can close the space also, like for you, for me, for anyone that listened, for anyone that will be listening, or that maybe somehow in spirit and heart and soul is connected, that all, find their grounding again, find the connection to Mother Earth, and find the connection to Source in a beautiful, intuitive way. And and allow themselves to work with your tools and your book and your beautiful gatherings to rise. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you for spending your precious time with us. As always, you can find links to everything we mentioned in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on the blog. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible with you, our community. If you loved this and would like to fund our show with a monthly donation or join our online group to connect with other listeners, please visit www.thefutureisbeautiful.co and click on Community and Support. Please also share with friends, hit subscribe, and leave us a review so we can grow. Those gold stars really help others find us, so these ideas can spread. Here is to us, creating a beautiful future together. The Future is Beautiful is made by an all-female team working voluntarily or on reduced rates until our listener support grows. If you have been moved by anything you heard here, please donate the equivalent of buying us a drink. All donations make a huge difference to us and will allow us to keep doing this and remain advertising free. Until next time, I leave you with this question. How will you create beauty in the world?